From 1939 to 1945, the Atlantic Ocean was the scene of the most important battle of the Second World War. A duel to the death between the submarines of the Third Reich and the Allied Navy led by the British. The British Navy was considered at the time as the most powerful in the world.
Its size was the combined size of the two next largest navies, which was France and Germany.
To try to defeat the English, the Nazis built gigantic bases on the French Atlantic coast to shelter the German submersibles.
On a vraiment l'impression d'une cathédrale de béton armé, de milliers de mètres cubes de béton armé autour de nous.
These superstructures almost turned the most important naval battle of the war to the Germans' advantage. Faced with these fortresses, the British develop a radically different strategy based on espionage and the decryption of communications of the German Navy. It is from one of the most secret places of the Second World War, hidden in the basements of Liverpool, that they will lead the Battle of the Atlantic.
It was a battle of intelligence, it was a battle of courage, and it was a battle of keeping going through dreadful conditions out in the North Atlantic.
Through these strategic locations, you will discover the incredible duel between the German Empire and the British Empire. A duel that was decisive in the course of the Battle of the Atlantic. The French ports of Brest, Lorient, Saint-Nazaire, La Rochelle, and Bordeaux are home to the largest buildings built by the Nazis outside German territory. Authentic fortress castles on the Atlantic, they still embody today the madness of a Reich that already saw itself as master of Europe. Remaining in its original state since 1945, the base of Saint-Nazaire still contains numerous vestiges. The two historians, Luc and Mark Brouwer, are the only ones who know all its secrets.
Ah bah ça c'est la base de Saint-Nazaire. Des 5 bases en France, c'est la mieux conservée parce que la marine ne s'en est jamais occupée. Du coup, ça n'a pratiquement pas bougé en fait.
Le temps s'est arrêté ici depuis 1945. Ouais. Cette partie était en fait réservée pour les ouvriers pour faire des logements. Dans cette pièce-là, il y a encore des lits?
Oui, il y a encore des lits ici. Ouais.
Here were hundreds of workers and technicians.
C'est là qu'il y a le marquage avec l'encre de marine. Et voilà. Donc là, on voit l'insigne porté par les marins allemands des transmissions.
All this infrastructure makes it possible to repair, refuel, and rearm German submersibles in a short time. Their mission is to hunt down and destroy the maximum of enemy ships crossing the Atlantic. Lorient is the largest of these bases.
Il y avait en tout 7 alvéoles.
Bien sûr.
Vous pouvez protéger ici 13 sous-marins à la fois.
Ouais. Et on voit bien la porte flottante qui va permettre de bloquer l'eau et de mettre le sous-marin à sec. Et une fois que le sous-marin était rentré, le volet blindé s'abaissait de façon à rendre l'alvéole totalement sécurisée et plus aucune bombe, aucune torpille ne pouvait accéder ici au sous-marin.
To understand the origin of these indestructible bunkers, we must go back to September 1st, 1939. That day, a German battleship fired the first shots of the Second World War. Great Britain goes to war 2 days later on the order of its Prime Minister.
This country is at war with Germany.
For the Führer and his generals, the looming confrontation is coming too soon. The Commander-in-Chief High Admiral Redder and Admiral Dönitz, Chief of the Submarine Fleet, will have to deal with it. Karl Dönitz refuses to voice any pessimism. This war is his moment. For the past 5 years, this underwater specialist has been training a whole generation of submarines in the Baltic Sea. His young sailors are now ready to die for him and Nazi Germany. Sure of himself, upon entering the war, he galvanizes them. We know our enemy. We have the right weapons and the command that can face him. The war will be long, but we will win if everyone does his job. However, he had only 57 submarines out of the 300 that he believed would allow him to win the war against the British fleet. It's not much, but he'll be relentless in his attacks. On September 3rd, 1939, he decided to hit the British first. Their first victim will be the British liner Athenia. Heading to New York, it carries 1,400 civilians. 128 people will perish in the sinking. The others will be rescued at the last moment the next morning. Karl Dönitz kicks off a huge chess game against the English to control the sea lanes. Its purpose is to stifle the economy of the British Isles by isolating them from the rest of the world. This is the beginning of the Battle of the Atlantic.
As Churchill said, everything in the Second World War depended on the outcome of the Battle of the Atlantic. 70% of Britain's food came through onto the sea routes.
To starve England, Dönitz pushes his commanders to torpedo a maximum of merchant ships. He instructs them to have no pity. Do not spare anyone. Take care only of your submersible and push for victory as fast as possible. We must destroy the enemy. Nothing else matters. To undermine the morale of the British and galvanize his troops, Dönitz needs a stunning blow. One of his submarines discreetly managed to penetrate the British Navy's rear base and sank one of the Royal Navy's most powerful battleships. 833 British sailors were killed. For Dönitz, it's the best victory. Against all odds, the beginning of the war benefited the submersibles. The Führer is now convinced that the underwater weapon is his key weapon in his attempt to bring the British to their knees. The invasion of France on May 10, 1940, gave Dönitz an unexpected opportunity to capture what his submarines needed to defy the English: home ports on the Atlantic seaboard, not far from the British coast. While the German motorized detachments rushed to take control of the main French ports, the English army is pushed back onto the beaches of Dunkirk, and it re-embarks. The British are now the last adversaries in the way of the Nazis, who are already considering an invasion of the United Kingdom. On June 22, 1940, the day of the signing of the Franco-German armistice, the Third Reich is in control of France's Atlantic coast. The next day, Admiral Dönitz inspects the Breton ports of Brest, Lorient, and Saint-Nazaire. He chooses Lorient to become the first operational port for U-boats in France. The peninsula of Kerallong is an ideal location to install a large base in the future.
On peut comprendre l'intérêt de choisir l'Orient. Pour les sous-marins allemands qui partent du nord de l'Allemagne au départ de la guerre, là pour faire le blocus de l'Angleterre, maintenant qu'ils occupent ces grands ports bretons, ils sont beaucoup plus prêts pour être sur les champs de bataille. Ils vont gagner 1 à 2 semaines d'économie de trajet. Et pour les U-boats, c'est stratégique.
15 jours
Oui.
après l'armistice, le 7 juillet 40, arrive ici, par là, l'U-30 de l'EMP, et c'est le premier sous-marin allemand qui arrive dans un port français.
Captain Julius Lemp, responsible for the destruction of the liner Athenia, proudly poses for propaganda photographers to display the grip Germany has on the Atlantic. Shortly, the whole second flotilla comes to claim its quarters in Lorient. Admiral Dönitz takes over 3 middle-class houses on the peninsula of Kerallong, making this his command post. From the location in the Villa Kerallong, just in front of the peninsula of Kerallong, he can observe the comings and goings of his submarines in the harbor. He personalizes the space by installing in the small bar a Kriegsmarine clock and a coffee table. On the table are tiles with the emblems of submarines that pass through Lorient. He also launches the construction of a command bunker attached to the Villa Kerallong. He will settle his staff there. In September 1940, he chooses Brest and Saint-Nazaire as 2 new ports. They will allow him to accommodate even more submarines. He gives clear orders to his commanders who arrive at the French coast. An immense coastal arc is now at our disposal. It is an incomparable advantage for the war effort against merchant ships. This is our chance. It must be seized as soon as possible. I will not tolerate weakness. Attack without letting go. Do not give an inch. What we take, we keep. Advance through attack. His faithful commanders will follow his instructions to the letter. Thanks to their new bases, their hunting ground has expanded considerably. The numerous prey will be easy victims.
The biggest danger of the Battle of the Atlantic was really from 1941 to 1942. This is when the biggest losses were experienced in the mid-Atlantic, which the Germans called their happy hunting ground, where convoys had no protection because quite often their escort ships had moved away and there was no aircraft protection for them either.
For the Allies, the losses are colossal. During this first year of war, 1,060 boats are sunk, more than half of them by U-boat torpedoes. At the front of the submarines, the pennants show the tonnage of the sunken ships, which accumulates as fast as the number of the ornaments. Admiral Dönitz generally rewards his men when they get these results. Iron Cross and Chevalier maintain the legend of the men who are willing to die for their leader.
C'est là qu'apparaissent les commandants dits les As, notamment comme Kretschmer, Prien, Schepke, qui viennent ici faire relâche à Lorient, qui font d'ailleurs se font concurrence tous les 3 ensemble.
Otto Kretschmer will set the ultimate record by torpedoing 56 ships of the Allied forces. The effectiveness of the Kriegsmarine aces encourages Hitler to build more and more submersibles. In the German arsenals, the pace is hellish. A submarine is launched every 3 days. Admiral Dönitz will soon be able to count on an additional 200 U-boats. The new priority is to establish them on the Atlantic coast in fortified bases, well equipped to protect, repair, and especially rearm them. For this gigantic operation, the great builder of the Reich, Fritz Todt, is enlisted. This early companion of the Führer rises to Minister of Armament of the Reich. He directs a huge organization of public works that develops the aura of the Nazi regime on a massive scale. His leadership since 1934 has contributed to the building of 3,000 kilometers of German motorways and the 600 kilometers of fortifications between Germany and France, the Siegfried Line. The Todt paramilitary organization, which employs the best German engineers, bears his name. The Reich's Labor Department can mobilize a large workforce in minimum time, even on mega projects.
Fritz Todt, il va arriver ici à Carnével et pendant 2 jours avec l'amiral Dönitz dans ces villes-là, il détermine un programme de construction. Au départ, c'est pour 3 ports, donc Brest, Lorient et Saint-Nazaire. Alors c'est 12 places à Brest, 12 à Lorient et 11 à Saint-Nazaire. Ça, doit être commencé dès la fin de l'année 40.
The architects of the compulsory labor service, called the STO, imagined an imposing aesthetic design. They modeled the project after the fortifications that prevented the total destruction of German submersibles during the First World War.
La première base qui a été construite, c'est peu connu, c'est à Bruges en 1917.
Pendant la Première Guerre
Pendant
mondiale.
la Première Guerre mondiale, les Allemands avaient déjà fait une base avec 8 alvéoles pour protéger leurs sous-marins des raids d'aviation alliés en Belgique occupée.
The Bruges base will serve as a matrix for all U-bunkers to be built on French territory. A special construction technique will allow the Germans to advance the work of the 5 bases at a pace that defies the imagination. A huge dike is first built to dry the site, which allows workers to work in dry conditions. The next step is the manufacture of the metal skeleton of the bunker. To assure its resistance, the mesh understructure is very dense. An iron rod every 10 centimeters. The skeleton is then boxed, and a specially treated concrete is poured inside to further reinforce it. Cranes position a giant metal frame on the supporting walls. The roof structure is formed. It will then be sealed and completely cemented over. At the end of the construction phase, the dikes are destroyed and the water rushes into the cells, making the space ready to accommodate the precious submarines.
Alors ce principe de construction assez incroyable, parce qu'on a sur des dimensions et des volumes de béton gigantesques, seront les mêmes principes sur les 5 bases.
Thousands of workers come from the whole of Europe for these high-paying jobs. Their wages are aligned with those of German workers.
Les Français qui travaillent pour l'organisation Todt sont effectivement soit des employés de ces grosses entreprises qui prennent les chantiers parce qu'elles n'ont pas le choix, soit aussi certains qui, des fois, préfèrent s'enrôler sur les chantiers du mur de l'Atlantique pour éviter d'être envoyés par le STO, le service du travail obligatoire, en Allemagne.
Les Allemands avaient des assurances sociales à l'époque assez importantes et des systèmes de primes, primes d'éloignement, primes de célibat, primes de risque de bombardement, etc. Et ils appliquent ces mêmes conditions aux travailleurs français, en fait. On a rencontré d'ailleurs beaucoup d'anciens travailleurs qui nous disaient à 15 ans, on gagnait autant qu'un professeur français en s'embauchant dans leur Todt, à porter des brouettes, ce genre de choses, des sacs de sable. Ils avaient le même salaire qu'un professeur en France.
To add to this voluntary workforce, the Vichy authorities provide the Todt organization with cheap labor. There are people coming from North Africa working alongside Spanish Republicans who were imprisoned in France after fighting Franco. These second-class workers are exploited at the base yards. Several thousand people will participate in these building projects. Later, hundreds of technicians set them up to operate independently.
C'était la centrale électrique numéro 2.
Voilà,
Ouais.
dieser Platz muss frei sein, ça veut dire que cette place doit toujours rester libre. Il ne faut rien stocker devant ici.
On va aller faire un petit tour à l'intérieur.
Ouais.
Oui, encore un téléphone en place. Il datait de 1941.
Incroyable. Il est resté en place depuis la Seconde Guerre mondiale. Avec la plaque marquée Siemens sur le côté. Et on voit la cloche ici à l'arrière.
Pour la sonnerie.
Pour la sonnerie, avec les petites résistances.
Et là, en fait, tout ça fait partie d'un
Voilà.
grand tableau électrique.
Voilà. Qui alimentait, en fait, qui permettait de répartir l'électricité dans les différents ateliers de la base. Incroyable, regarde, encore les marquages, moteur 1, moteur 2.
C'était la salle des transformateurs pour transformer l'énergie qui arrivait à très haut voltage. On voit ici, on pouvait passer d'un voltage à un autre, avec du 220 et du 380. Parce qu'il y avait aussi les appareils français qui fonctionnaient, les appareils allemands.
On voit les arrivées des câbles.
Voilà, et ils pouvaient se brancher après avec leurs appareils directement pour travailler sur les sous-marins.
Alors là, qu'est-ce qu'on découvre? Effectivement, un profil de Winston Churchill, le Premier ministre anglais de l'époque, et qui était pour les sous-mariniers l'ennemi numéro 1.
Prime Minister Winston Churchill, the sworn enemy of Hitler. To prevent the construction of German bunkers, in April 1941 he launched the Royal Air Force in an attack on the Germans' constructions on the French coast. But the Kriegsmarine's air defenses are well organized and efficient. Unable to slow down the completion of the German shipyards, the British adopt another strategy. In Liverpool, the largest English port, the Royal Navy installs a new command post. From here, they will organize all the combat strategy against the submarines and protect their convoys.
We are underneath what was known as Derby House in Exchange Flag Square behind the town hall. This is possibly one of the most important buildings of the Second World War for the Allies. We're currently under street level in what's known as the map room or the operations room. This building was a combined headquarters between the Navy and the Air Force. So the Navy obviously were managing and controlling all the shipping, but the Air Force was really, really important because aircraft are extremely good at detecting and bombing U-boats effectively. The building took about 300 people. 80% of those staff were women, many of whom were very young, around the ages of 17, 18, 19. Many of the men who worked here were reserve officers and over the age of 40, because if you were younger than that, you would be at the fighting front.
It was here that one of the most important decisions for the conduct of the Battle of the Atlantic was made. The temporary abandonment of the bombings of the underwater bases on the French coasts.
Those U-boat bases they're still there. They were built with roofs, I don't know how thick, they were almost impregnable. So again, where do you get most bang for your buck, as we say? It's better to try and focus your resources on sinking U-boats in the North Atlantic and bombing civilian targets in Germany than trying to bomb something that is impregnable.
As a result, the Germans complete the construction of their Saint-Nazaire base almost unhindered. The first 3 cells were built in just 3 months. June 30, 1941, Admiral Dönitz inaugurates the base with great pomp. And Fritz Todt gives him the original plans as a symbol of this feat. Cell number 5, which the first submarine entered, is today the best preserved of all of them on the French bases. It's the one where we can observe the greatest number of traces left by the German crews.
Alors l'alvéole 5, elle est vraiment dans son état d'origine.
Ouais.
Il y a encore on voit bien les ponts roulants qui sont restés en place.
Il y a 2 ponts roulants là.
Les numéros.
T'en as encore un
avec
là-bas.
les
Ouais.
box.
Ouais.
Box 5, marqué d'époque.
Ouais. Et t'as même le passage en bois là,
Ouais.
sur le haut de l'alvéole. Alors ça, c'est vraiment le dernier qui doit rester de toutes les bases. Hein. Ouais, y a pas grand monde qui...
Non, qui a
Qui
pu avoir
rentre
accès
dedans,
ici. Allez, on y va.
The crucial element that makes these war machines go is obviously diesel. So bases also serve as service stations. Once filled, the submersibles can travel thousands of kilometers.
Alors on arrive sous le niveau du sol. C'était ce qu'on appelait la station-service de la base, où ils allaient en fait alimenter en carburant, en gasoil, tous les U-boats dans les 14 alvéoles. Il y avait 20 U-boats différents. Ouais.
Ici, il y a des immenses cuves qui remontent jusqu'au toit de la base sous-marine, des cuves en acier, on voit les parois, et ces immenses cuves, effectivement, alimentaient les pompes qui sont ici. Toute la tuyauterie distribuait le gasoil dans les alvéoles pour que les sous-marins fassent le plein. Ça sent encore le gasoil d'ailleurs. Hein.
Ouais. Ce qui est étonnant, c'est qu'avec un seul plein ici à Saint-Nazaire dans la base, ils pouvaient quand même atteindre les côtes des États-Unis d'ici. Hein.
Ouais.
This is what Dönitz will plan to do in January 1942 by organizing Operation Symbol. Following America's entry into the war a month earlier, the Admiral decided to attack the east coast of the United States. U-boats departing from the French bases cross the Atlantic in 15 days and torpedo all ships they encounter. Within a month, 25 Allied ships are sunk. This is a new success for the German submarines and their leader. Admiral Dönitz took the opportunity to inform all the German staff. In this American coastal zone, our enemy does not expect our attacks. We must use this advantage to the maximum. Every time the Americans lose a tanker, it's an immediate setback to their construction program. I believe that the competition between their factories and our submarines is not a lost cause. For their part, British intelligence warns Churchill of an immense danger threatening them. The Tirpitz, the largest battleship in the German Navy, is preparing to join the packs of U-boats in the Atlantic. To prevent it from ravaging the Atlantic, Churchill has only one solution: organize a commando raid on Saint-Nazaire, the only French port with a dry dock big enough to accommodate it. The 350-meter-long Joubert Lock is the only basin large enough to dry dock the giant battleship. This attack will be the first major operation of the British commandos on the occupied French coasts. On the night of March 28, 1942, 611 British soldiers attacked by sea the port of Saint-Nazaire, defended by 4,000 Nazi soldiers. When the German commandos land, they come under fire from the Germans positioned on the roof of the base. 170 men are killed, 200 others are taken prisoner. But their mission will succeed thanks to a ship loaded with explosives. The next day, the Germans discover the destroyer HMS Campbelltown, caught in the mouth of the Joubert Lock.
Ils vont détruire la forme Joubert parce que le navire, le Campbelltown, est rempli d'explosifs, donc il va exploser au petit matin.
Voilà, 5 tonnes d'explosifs qui explosent le lendemain en plein jour.
Voilà. Donc là, effectivement, cet objectif est atteint. Et donc, c'est un des grands succès de ce raid incroyable. Ils se sont jetés dans la gueule du loup. Et par contre, la partie neutralisation de la base sous-marine est un échec.
In 1942, construction of the U-bunkers of La Rochelle and Bordeaux is still underway. 98 U-boats. An incredible organization is being set up which allows attack missions to be carried out continuously in the Atlantic.
Ça veut dire qu'il y a à peu près 300 U-boats qui sont au combat. Une centaine en réparation dans les différents points d'appui en France, à peu près un autre tiers, une autre centaine qui va être sur les voies de retour ou d'aller des zones d'opération, et une centaine qui est en train de combattre.
For Admiral Dönitz, it's a golden time. It is with pride that he welcomes Japanese allies into his largest base in Lorient.
Der kommandierende Admiral Frankreich, Admiral Schulze, und der Befehlshaber der Unterseeboote, Admiral Dönitz, begeben sich mit dem japanischen Marineattaché zur Begrüßung an Bord.
Les Japonais vont envoyer 3 sous-marins japonais ici qui vont arriver sur les côtes françaises.
Alors, il y en a 2 à Lorient, 1 à Brest. Et ce sont des sous-marins, en fait, plutôt que des sous-marins de bataille, des sous-marins cargo.
Voilà.
Car ils ont des énormes cales qui leur permettent de transporter des matières premières qui sont indispensables à l'industrie allemande, de l'opium, de la quinine, du caoutchouc. Et en échange, ils leur remplissent les cales avec des torpilles dernier modèle, des moteurs d'avion à réaction, des plans. Et tout ça repart vers le Japon.
There is also a diplomatic meeting between allies led by powerful Admiral Raeder. German news stories tell of a welcoming interaction of exchanges between Japanese submariners and Germans about culture and sports. This illustrates that they have become brothers in arms. Faced with the power of the German forces on land as well as on sea, Churchill is worried. He knows that the aftermath of the war depends on the military control of the North Atlantic, especially because at the time, the priority of the Allies is to supply the Red Army that is struggling against the Wehrmacht's offensive. Huge convoys loaded with weapons, fuel, and food are leaving the United States for the Soviet Union. They are closely watched by British escorts that are charged with protecting them from underwater attacks. Admiral Dönitz understood that he absolutely had to win this battle. He will deploy all his forces to stop these convoys and to use to his advantage an area dubbed the Atlantic Hole. A large area of several thousand square kilometers in the middle of the North Atlantic. Here, Allied convoys cannot expect any help from aviation. This is where Dönitz positions his submarines to await them. When a U-boat spots a ship, it picks it up and warns the Admiral's headquarters by radio. The headquarters then directs the other U-boats in the location of the convoy to intercept it. This sudden convergence of submarines in the manner of a pack of wolves panics the Allies. These group attacks devastate the Allies and become Dönitz's hallmark. But this formidable tactic has a weak point, which will eventually cause the loss of Nazi submarines. It uses a lot of radio communications from one place, a place today forgotten.
Alors on est ici à Bassland, à 10 km de Nantes. On est ici sur un site stratégique pour la bataille d'Atlantique. C'était le centre d'émission des messages pour les U-boats. C'était une ancienne station de TSF de la marine française. C'est même la plus grosse station à l'ouest de la France. Construite en 1919, modernisée en 1937, qui a eu un rôle primordial durant la Seconde Guerre mondiale pour la conduite de la bataille d'Atlantique chez les Allemands.
Effectivement, les U-boats qui opèrent dans tous les océans doivent recevoir des messages. On doit leur indiquer où ont été repérés les convois. Il faut qu'ils puissent se regrouper. Et donc ces messages leur sont envoyés à travers des antennes géantes qui se trouvent derrière. Donc il y a 10 énormes pylônes de 180 mètres de haut avec 12 km de câbles et qui vont permettre d'envoyer les messages aux U-boats sur tous les océans.
À partir d'ici, les sous-marins peuvent recevoir des messages de l'amiral Dönitz jusqu'aux côtes américaines. Les messages étaient perceptibles jusqu'à 80 mètres sous l'eau.
From his headquarters in Kerallong, Karl Dönitz encrypts his orders. Confident in their Enigma machine, the Germans deem their coded messages as indecipherable. At Bas-Lond, the communications are amplified to be sent to the entire fleet in operation. But this information from the Kriegsmarine is very much monitored. The British intercept it with radio receivers installed on their shores. It's their attempt to thwart the strategy of the Germans. All the messages seized are then sent to the English countryside at Bletchley Park. It is in this pastoral atmosphere that the decoding teams of the Ultra Project work under the utmost secrecy to decode Enigma. Alan Turing, a 29-year-old math genius, achieves this by June 1941.
Bletchley Park did the work in being able to break the Enigma cipher. The most important thing about it is the Germans never knew that the Allies had broken the Enigma code. So they didn't know we were reading their messages over and over again. They actually thought we must have some special secret weapon in the North Atlantic because we knew what they were about to do. But they were so confident in the Enigma code that they couldn't believe it had been broken.
From then on, the Allies will be one step ahead of their opponent's game. To protect the convoys, the British intelligence service also cross-checks its information with another very important source, the networks of the French resistance, like that of La Rochelle.
À La Rochelle, il y a une population d'environ 50 000 personnes et il y a à peu près 4-5 réseaux de résistance qui font du recrutement auprès de gens qui travaillent déjà dans la base et ils obtiennent des renseignements comme ça. Parfois aussi, ils vont même volontairement infiltrer des gens qui proposent leurs services aux Allemands pour travailler dans la base et sortir des renseignements.
Comme ils ne peuvent pas avoir accès directement aux sous-marins et faire des sabotages, ça va principalement se limiter à faire du renseignement, de façon à ce que les Alliés sachent quand un sous-marin arrive, quand il repart, quand on voit la fanfare qui commence à se préparer, ça veut dire qu'une heure plus tard, un sous-marin va arriver. Les sous-mariniers qui allaient dans les bars ou dans les hôtels, qui se saoulaient parce qu'ils savaient que le lendemain ils repartaient, en étant un peu saoul, ils lâchaient des informations qui étaient remontées et qui arrivaient aux Alliés.
In Lorient, one man will be particularly effective in this intelligence war. The maritime engineer Jacques Stoskov belongs to the Alliance network. He hides his game so well that he becomes deputy director of Kerallong's arsenal.
Tout le monde pensait à Lorient que c'était le collaborateur parfait, c'était un Alsacien qui parlait couramment l'allemand, qu'on voyait souvent avec les Allemands, et c'est lui en fait qui transmettait tous les renseignements sur les sous-marins qui sortaient, quand les insignes qu'ils portaient, combien ils ramenaient de fanions, etc.
Endowed with an extraordinary memory, Stoskov memorizes all the comings and goings of the German submarines in the Bay of Lorient. This information he recites by heart to his contact with the Alliance network, which is then transmitted to the British command. His skill and cover make him one of the greatest spies of the Second World War. He will be one of the last Breton resistance fighters to be unmasked and to be executed shortly before the end of the war. In early 1943, all the combined Allied efforts begin to pay off. The Germans have seen a large part of their surface fleet and all their great battleships disappear. Hitler decides to sack Admiral Karl, who has lost all credit in his eyes. Karl Dönitz replaces him at the head of the Kriegsmarine and leaves France definitively. To mark his consecration, the new Grand Admiral organizes a large naval parade, a demonstration of strength which aims to impress his opponents, but especially to re-engage his men. We have to win. Considerations about the state of the fleet are of no interest. War at sea is submarine warfare. Everything else must support this primary objective. But Dönitz's submarines are no longer in a strong position. For several weeks, the losses on the German side have been increasing. In Liverpool, the command center of the British Navy also has a new leader who will become for Karl Dönitz the most formidable opponent, Admiral Max Horton.
The Max Horton was somewhat of a character. He had been a submariner during the First World War in 1914. Legend has it that he saw his battle with Karl Dönitz as being like a personal golf match with him, where each stroke was a tactic and a move against your opponent. And they were sort of mirroring each other over that distance of what they were all trying to do.
To take advantage, Admiral Horton will use the Allies' progress in the field of detection. Surface radar and sonar installed on ships are becoming more efficient. They can spot and destroy submarines before the subs attack. New models of long-range aircraft now provide aerial coverage of shipping routes.
Guns blazing, planes close upon the submarine before it can submerge.
Ruthlessly, they hunt down German submersibles.
Submarines sent to the bottom.
In May 1943, Dönitz lost 41 submarines, half his combat strength.
Suite à une demande de Churchill, Bomber Harris, le chef du Bomber Command, prend la décision de dévaster le territoire autour des bases. Alors il y a une liste, ça commence par Lorient, ensuite Saint-Nazaire, Brest, La Pallice, et pendant 3 mois, les vagues de bombardiers vont se succéder jour et nuit. Donc les Américains de jour, les Anglais de nuit. Ils lancent jusqu'à 250 000 bombes incendiaires pour certains raids, et en fait les villes de Lorient et Saint-Nazaire sont complètement détruites.
27,000 tons of bombs are dropped on the bases and their surroundings. The civilian population is forced to evacuate the cities. Hundreds are killed. Shipyard workshops are destroyed, but the basics continue to work. The roofs, composed of 3 layers of concrete, resist Allied bombing. An incredible bidding is taking place.
Les Allemands font des toits en béton armé, une première épaisseur de 3,50 m, puis ils renforcent le toit de la base sous-marine de encore 1,70 m d'épaisseur, mais les Alliés ne restent pas inactifs. Eux se disent, voilà, on a 5 mètres de béton armé à percer, et ils vont produire des bombes énormes jusqu'aux bombes Tallboy, qui faisaient 5,5 tonnes. Et donc c'est effectivement toujours, les Alliés progressent, les Allemands rajoutent une couche de béton. Les Alliés progressent avec leurs bombes, les Allemands rajoutent une couche de béton.
To deaden the shock of these giant bombs, German engineers design a system called Fangrost. This forms the first protective layer of the roof. It is composed of parallel beams placed over corridors, which are called explosion or burst chambers.
Ici, donc, nous sommes dans cette chambre d'éclatement sur le toit de la base sous-marine de Lorient, avec les poutrelles de ces structures Fangrost. Et c'est drôlement impressionnant. On a cette lumière qui passe entre ces poutrelles et on a vraiment une notion, un petit peu une impression d'une cathédrale de béton armé, de milliers de mètres cubes de béton armé autour de nous.
Upon impact of a bomb explosion, the beam breaks and crumbles, raining down the powder, but without breaking down the lower layers of the roof. The Fangrost cover technology was started on all the bases, but not one project was completed anywhere. In Saint-Nazaire, it covers only 1/3 of the roof. It is, however, thanks to this system that the bases are reputed to be indestructible. Numerous setbacks by the end of May 1943 force Admiral Dönitz to announce to the Führer that he was temporarily withdrawing his submarines from the North Atlantic. Convoy attacks are being phased out. Nazi Germany is retreating everywhere, on all fronts. On June 6, 1944, Operation Overlord was unleashed. The Allies land on the beaches of Normandy and smash the Atlantic Wall. Their goal is to quickly take control of a large French port to establish a beachhead capable of supplying their troops. The United States military chooses the most westerly port of the French coast, Brest. On July 27, 1944, began a fierce battle around the submarine base that serves as a shelter for German troops. Brest is flattened. After a month and a half of fierce fighting, the U.S. forces win. But the battle brings heavy losses.
Mais la bataille coûte cher, hein. 10 000 hommes mis hors de combat, tués et blessés pour l'armée américaine, un siège qui a duré 1 mois et demi. Et en fait, le port est complètement inutilisable. Il reste 3 bases, Lorient, Saint-Nazaire, La Palisse. Et en fait, ces bases vont rester au centre de ce qu'on appellera les poches de l'Atlantique.
In Lorient, Saint-Nazaire, and La Rochelle, nearly 120,000 German soldiers are besieged. Underwater bases become impregnable fortresses, symbols of the ultimate German resistance. Hitler even orders that these pockets of the Atlantic be defended until the last man.
Alors là, on est au rez-de-chaussée de la base.
Dans les blocs de ce qu'on appelle les blocs de combat pour la défense rapprochée de la base.
Et là, ils avaient carrément mis un canon anti-char de 47 mm.
Ouais. C'est un canon tchèque, un canon Skoda. Donc on voit le masque blindé et le canon trouvait sa place ici. Et il pouvait effectivement...
À protéger tout l'accès arrière à la base, en fait.
On voit encore ce pochoir d'époque qui servait en fait pour les soldats qui étaient dedans de pré-régler leur tir. Et cette petite cartouche est encore totalement phosphorescent. La peinture phosphorescente date d'il y a 75 ans, mais quand on enlève, on aperçoit encore, voilà.
Some of the personnel of the submarine bases will join the combat units. The workshops are adapted so that tanks and land armaments can be built there.
La base sert vraiment de centre névralgique pour l'armée allemande. C'est là qu'ils vivent, qu'ils se protègent.
Mais leur activité devient extrêmement réduite. Il y a quand même quelque part dans l'esprit des Allemands de les conserver. Ils ont peur que si les Alliés s'en saisissent, ils les dynamitent. Et alors qu'ils se disent peut-être qu'on arrivera à reprendre le dessus avec les armes V, à réutiliser ces bases. Donc il faut à tout prix les conserver. C'est vraiment le cœur des forteresses et c'est vraiment l'objet à préserver à tout prix.
The German soldiers who are holed up in these bunkers will hold on until the end of the war. Lorient and Saint-Nazaire will be liberated 2 days after the surrender on May 8, 1945. Once again, the walls of these bases testify to history.
Là, on traverse l'alvéole, numéro 5 de la base de Saint-Nazaire. Et on voit une belle croix de Lorraine avec le V de la victoire. Et on sait quelle unité, en fait, c'est le 4e régiment de fusiliers marins qui a pris la base ici le 11 mai 45, qui a peint cette croix de Lorraine ici.
Ces étranges véhicules ont été construits clandestinement par les hommes de la Résistance.
General de Gaulle will make the Breton ports the symbol of reconstruction. The bases that had been under German Marines as abandoned structures will now be invested by the French Navy. The few captured German submersibles will be put back into service under the French flag. Despite the Nazi debacle, mythic Admiral Karl Dönitz will remain loyal to the Reich until Hitler's suicide. In the meantime, the Führer makes him his successor. He will take his place at the head of Germany before being stopped by the Allies at Flensburg on May 23, 1945. A few months later at the Nuremberg trial, he is found in the box of the accused with many of the surviving Nazi dignitaries. Accused of crimes against humanity and war crimes because he ordered his submarines not to rescue the castaways of the torpedoed ships. He will escape the rope, but will serve 10 years in prison. He dies in a village in northern Germany in 1980. 5,000 people, including many veterans of the Navy, will attend his funeral. But Winston Churchill, the great winner of the Battle of the Atlantic, probably best explained in his memoirs the danger that Dönitz, his submarines, and his bunkers represented. The only thing that really worried me during the Second World War was the danger presented by the German submarines. The submarine bases of the French coastline are the last vestiges of Nazi Germany's desire to dominate the Atlantic. Like the Third Reich's dream of lasting forever, the bases do still seem indestructible today. Yet, the reinforced concrete of which they are constructed is heading towards its own demise. Day after day, drop by drop, their metal core is rusting away. The Battle of the Atlantic, the longest campaign of the Second World War, cost the lives of 45,000 Allied sailors and 30,000 German submariners. 85% of the men who served under Karl Dönitz died in action.